Hello, we are group 2 and we're doing our project on reducing forest fires. And this is our observations research. We responded to the brief by observing videos of firefighting in practice, but we also supplemented our research with Zoom calls and email conversations. The first of these conversations was a phone call with a fireman at Lanark Fire Station. So some of the key takeaways were it takes a very long time to deal with remote forest fires, partly because you have to decide on tactics which vary from fire to fire, situation to situation, and you have to get water, personnel, and equipment to the site of the fire, which can take a long time. Also, because there's not often water to draw on at the site of the fire, they use defensive tactics to stop fires. So, for example, stopping a fire at a road, stopping it from jumping from one side of the road to the other, and stopping fire igniting in grassy areas, so jumping from a forested area to a grassy area, for example, using beaters. Better forest design, he thinks, would much improve the response. So this would be including fire breaks in commercial forests or including fire ponds in forests as well, which they could use to draw water from when they're fighting fires. The second of our conversations was a Zoom call with Joe Bachman, who's a forestry lecturer at Duke University, and he's also a former volunteer firefighter. So the key takeaways from this conversation was that the public needs a much better understanding of forest fires as an essential ecological process. So he was explaining that wildfires are necessary in the forest and the plant life cycle to maintain healthy growth. So a forest can reduce the density of trees in an area, allowing for new growth. Some trees even require a fire to reproduce. However, because humans have intervened in this process and stopped these small forest fires from occurring, there's been a huge buildup of fuel in forests, and that's what's been causing our recent catastrophic fires, for example, in California. But his key point from a former volunteer firefighter's point of view is that safeguarding homes would have a huge impact in limiting damages and limiting loss of life. So that could be creating a fire perimeter or raking leaves on a property to prevent the fire from having anything to burn on the property.
Castle Rock Fire Observation. Key takeaways are wildfires are easier to produce and spread quickly in areas with dry climate. The Fire and Rescue Department provides first, advanced life support and emergency medical service. Second is fire prevention and inspection services. Third one is fire suppression response. Then hazardous material response and mitigation. And public and risk reduction education. And last one is technical rescue services. The reason why we need fire preventative techniques because some areas are easier to start fire and allows wildland fire to develop quickly. There are two main points of preventative techniques. One is no open fire. Second one is no personal fireworks.
From video observation, key takeaways are periodically clear vegetation and burn up dry brush helps controlling where don't want fire to go. Existing problems, like communicating, need to make sure information is accurate in emergency, and fire line is changing all the time. Some innovations, for example, chemical agent prevents misting of water.
Zoom call with Helen, an anonymous member of the Government of Western Australia. After going through some GDPR questions with Helen, she requested that her identity remained anonymous so that she could reveal some more sensitive information as to how the fire services in Perth, Australia are operated. Some key takeaways from the call were that 50 fires occur every day in Australia, and that the majority of these fires are actually left to burn out on their own, whilst being monitored from afar. One of these monitoring techniques was using fire shapes and their auroras to predict how the fire would spread and whether any evacuation was necessary. The majority of fire response in Australia is volunteer, and in urban areas like Perth, the West Coast, they have a response time of around 12 minutes. Because some of the fire response in Australia is volunteer, there's some unethical calling of areas like Perth for fire services because of the response times being so much faster. Everyone in Australia needs to make something that's called a fire plan, which is effectively an online document that everyone needs to fill out, which describes their exact plan of action in the event of a fire. Another key takeaway of the call was that they have a total fire ban in place, which prevents any use of anything that could possibly start a fire, such as an angle grinder, which actually caused a fire quite recently that destroyed 80 homes. Email response from Tony Powell, Station Commander of Fire and Rescue of New South Wales. Tony is from the west coast of Australia, so sort of the opposite side from Helen, and he gave lots of information in his email, but focused mainly on the most damaging aspect of their fire and rescue operation, which was dealing with large fires. The key takeaways of his email were that large fires are fires that are over 1 hectare in size, which are roughly 100 meters squared. These will involve aerial waterbombing, mitigation burning, which is effectively damage limitation, the RAF team deployed via helicopter, and 4x4 firefighting tankers. One of the biggest issues that Tony raised was access to water. So in areas that most fires occur, there's virtually no access to water, and their biggest priority was, of course, the safety of their firefighting personnel.